Good afternoon, everyone. We are now continuing on our study in the book of Numbers. We are now in chapter 7, but there is something that we need to pay attention to because chapter 7 onwards is not in a chronological sense. And it picks up from Exodus. The last chapter of Exodus is where we took off in Exodus chapter 40, where God instructed Moses to set up the tabernacle. And so today, when we look at this chapter, chapter 7, it came to pass and it happens when Moses had completed setting up the tabernacle. He anointed it, he consecrated it, all its furnishings, the altar, the utensils, he anointed them and consecrated them. Now, this particular verse gives us the context to what's going to happen from chapter 7 onwards. But let's have a context of the chronology and the timing. Let's first of all break down the verse. It means that when it is at a time when Moses finished. Now, the word finished means he has completed. He has completed, and it says here, setting up the tabernacle. Now, the Hebrew word is not about setting up the tabernacle. It really means to raise up. Now, you know, a tabernacle is actually a tent. This word here is the Mishkan, right? A Mishkan. The word tabernacle here is the Mishkan. And the Mishkan really means a dwelling place. So let me just put this down in a different color. Dwelling place. It's like a tent. You know, it's a residence. And so whenever the English word tabernacle is used with reference to the Mishkan, it gives us a picture that it's like the house of God. It is the place where God dwells. And that's the picture of the tabernacle. And that's the meaning that we are getting from here. And it is about not setting up, but it's about raising up. And you know, tents is about putting up the tent. So the English word setting up is a more modern concept where it's about, putting in all the planks, the walls, raising up the stakes, putting up the coverings, all of that, which was described in such detail in the book of Exodus, where God instructed Moses how to do it. And then there was Oholiab, and then the workers put it all together. Now, they were making the utensils, they were making the cloths, they were designing it. But in chapter 7, verse 1, it talks about the time when he has completed raising it up. And when he has completed raising it up, we read of these words here, anointed it. And the word that is and then. It means that after the dwelling place, the Mishkan was put up, then only he anointed it. And this would be smearing. Smearing with oil. Now that's anointing. All right. And this is the symbol of consecration. So it is smearing it. And this word here, consecrated, is to dedicate, make holy. And basically it's to set it apart for God. And first of all, you notice it here means the tabernacle and all its furnishing. Now you need to understand there is no word called furnishing. Uh, the word furnishing here means all the tools. Well, literally, it means all the tools. But you need to understand that the tools would be the vessels, right? All the utensils. And so the whole aspect of anointing and consecrating includes not only the tabernacle, but includes the furnishings, which are all the tools, the utensils, the vessels, the spoons, the shovels, no, the tables. And so here it describes it is the altar, and you know the altar is a bronze altar. And then here it refers to all the tools as well. That's the same word, right? Utensils, the tools. The altar has its tools. The tabernacles has its tools. So you know that once it's in the inside, and so this word is the inside. This one is on the outside. Different tools, basically. Different tools. And this word here, and so would be, and then he smeared them with oil. Now, always, right? All the anointing or the act of anointing, or we call anointing, literally is to smear it with oil and to set them apart. Basically, is to make them holy, make them special. Now, understand this, that the making them special doesn't have any magical significance. The significance in this case is that this is done with the intent to set them apart for the use for God. And so each time we read the word consecrate, anoint, make holy, whether it's with regards to the tabernacle here, right? We see it as the tabernacle. We see it as the tools. We see it as the altar. We see it as the utensils for the altar and on the outside. So both the inside and the outside. All these words, anoint, consecrate, or the modern day word that we use to make them holy, is really with regards to God. If it's not with regards to God, the words are chosen differently. And so anointing, consecrating, make holy has to do in relationship with God and what is done for the purpose of God and his plans. And so the tabernacle is God's dwelling place, and everything that's inside there is special, is holy, is unique. And there is a symbolism ritual called the anointing that separates all these utensils, which actually they use that at home. But this time, in this case, it's different. Why? Because it's in the tabernacle and it's to be used by God. And so that's how these words are used. I want to take us back to a context, and we will go back to Exodus chapter 40. In Exodus chapter 40, these are the times when God is instructing Moses, right? Jehovah was speaking to Moses saying, look at these dates. On the first day of the first month, and this would be the month of Nisan, also called Aviv. And there is an instruction, you shall set up the tabernacle of the tent of meeting. Now in Exodus chapter 40, the word here for set up in verse 2 is the same word. You shall raise up. Raise up means to lift up and to put up the tent, right? The tabernacle here is the Mishkan of the tent of Moed. Now this is the picture. And then it says, after you've put them up, you will put inside the Ark of the Testimony. You need to partition off with a veil, so you have a holy place and the holiest place. You will set up the table, arrange the things to be in order for it, the menorah, and you light up the lamps. There is an altar of gold incense in front of the Ark of the Testimony, and you shall put the screen to the door of the Mishkan. And then outside you have the altar of burnt offering in front of the door of the tabernacle. And then there's a wash basin, a wash laver between the tabernacle of meeting and the altar, and you shall put water in it. You shall set up the court all around and hang up the screen at the court gate. Now, this is the instruction. After you set up, you shall put all the things in place. Next, verse 9, you shall take the anointing oil. Notice the anointing oil is oil, and that would be the olive oil. Anoint the tabernacle and all that is in it, all the tools. All that is in it are the tools. And you shall hallow it and all its utensils, and it shall be holy. So the act of anointing the Mishkan and the utensils is to make it special, because it is only meant for God's purposes. That's what holy means. Then you shall also anoint the altar and its tools. And then you shall consecrate the altar. The altar shall be most holy. It's also special. Anoint the laver and its base and consecrate it. Now, all of these are actions that need to be done. And that's what we are reading in Numbers chapter 7. Now, let us now go to Numbers chapter 1. Now, Numbers chapter 1 tells us this. And in verse 1, the Lord spoke to Moses in the wilderness in the tabernacle of meeting on the first day of the second month, in the second year after they had come out of Egypt. Now notice this, the tabernacle of meeting, which is the Mishkan of Moed, is there because God spoke to Moses inside. And it was on the first day of the second month in the second year, which means that chapter 1 of Numbers all the way to chapter 6 had taken place after the tabernacle of meeting was already raised. Right? It was already set up. And so all the senses in chapters 1, 2, and 3, and 4 are all spoken of. And so now in chapter 7, when we read, when Moses had finished up setting up the tabernacle, this means that Moses just had barely completed setting up, right? It's completed raising up the Mishkan. And so what are we reading? We are reading in chapter 7 what Moses is doing when on the first day of the first month. Remember, we refer back to Exodus chapter 40, verses 1 to, well, I guess we could read verses 1 to 2. The time is on the first month, first day of the first month of the year. And that would be the second year. And it would be before Numbers chapter 1. Because Numbers chapter 1 spoke about the second month, the first day of the second month. And so this particular setting up of the Mishkan must take place on the first day of the first month. And so we are now reading backwards in terms of its chronology. That's what I'm trying to point out to you, that in the first day of the first month, when Moses put this up, it takes time, by the way. It is not just a 1 day, 1 hour thing. And after he has completed this, he is ready to anoint it. And this is all spoken of in Exodus chapter 40. And so that's what I have tried to point out to you, that these words are in Exodus chapter 40. And so you need to go back and refer to what actually happened. And this is in a nutshell. And so I hope we can get that chronology right. And then it says, and then the leaders of Israel, the heads of their fathers' houses, who were leaders of the tribes and over all those who were numbered, made an offering. Now, here it spoke about numbering, but the numbering took place on the first day of the second month. And so in chapter 7, it is recorded in a chronological fashion, meaning the recording is recording about what took place before chapter 1, but it was recorded after chapter 6. Now, what does that mean? It means that in Numbers chapter 1 to chapter 6, the events happened and it was recorded, and chapter 7 is recorded after the time of chapter 6. That's what it means. It is recorded in a chronological fashion, but the events of chapter 7 happened before chapter 1. So that is what I'm trying to help all of us understand, the picture here in Numbers chapter 7. And what is important for us now to understand is that after they were numbered, which means that you remember in chapter 1, 2, and 3, there were the census, and then there were the counting of the Levites and the firstborn and the redemption. Yes, all of these were done, and these are the people there, the leaders of Israel. And when it says the leaders of Israel, these are the Nasi. The leaders are the princes. That's the word Nasi, prince. And you read this in Ezekiel chapter 40, and thereafter we talk about the prince. It's the same word. The leader, a Nasi, a chief, a captain of Israel. And in this case, it is the 11, well, you can say the 12 tribes, right? And really, these are the heads, the Rosh, literally they are the heads of the fathers' houses, and these are each of the tribes except Levi. And you know the obvious reason, because Levi or the Levites are set apart to minister or to serve in the Mishkan. And here are the counting of the rest. You have the leaders of the tribes and over those who were numbered. And remember, they were numbered and counted 20 years and above. But these are the representatives, and they made an offering in verse 2. And essentially, when it says made an offering, let me just explain to you. It literally says that they came to approach. Of course, this would mean approach God, and literally they are approaching, they are drawing near to the tabernacle. And what did they bring? So they brought their offering before Jehovah, and this would be towards the tabernacle. Now, in this case, it says about the offering. The word offering here is actually korban, right? Korban. Korban means something that is a present, an offering to God, something that you bring when you come and meet someone. And in this case, when they come to meet God, they bring offering, and that would be korban, offering. And it'd be in the form of animals, in the form of meals, in the form of various things. Okay. And then you would find that they brought it in 6 covered carts. Covered means they are, like wagons. Carts are really like wagons. Well, I guess in the Hebrew, it's a vehicle. And carts is actually a good word, or a wagon, right? Pulled by an animal, and they are covered. And there are 6, which means that there will be one cart has 2 leaders. So why are there 12 of them when there are 11 tribes? And so you need to go back and make sure that we are all very familiar. There are 12 parcels of land, and Levi does not inherit a land. And Joseph, instead of him alone, has been divided into 2 parcels of land by his 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, and thereby completing 12 parcels of land. And so each of them, 2 by 2, are in each of the carts. And then each of the tribes will bring 1 ox. Ox means bullock. Bullock means male. And all of these, you have to go back and read Leviticus chapter 1 to 5. What kind of offering can they bring to God when they come to meet him? And so they presented them before the tabernacle. And this is making an offering to God. Then the Lord spoke to Moses saying, and this is God telling Moses inside, right? He says, go and accept these from them, that they may be used in doing the work of the tabernacle of meeting, and you shall give them to the Levi, every man according to his service. Now understand this. This is God telling Moses exactly what to do with all these offerings. Now the word accept literally means take. Take from them. Well, in Hebrew, when you take from someone, it is equivalent to the English concept of accepting. And so this is the action that is described from all the leaders, all 12 leaders, that they may be used. They would be all the offerings, right? That they would be used in the work. Work are things to do in the tabernacle of meeting, which is the Mishkan of Moab. And you shall give them to the Levi, because in chapter 4, so you should look at Numbers chapter 4, and they had divided the Levites according to their service. Now remember, the Levites is the tribe. And the priests is also a part of the Levite, but the priest is specifically from the descendants of Aaron. Now, Moses is a Levite, Aaron is a Levite, but the priesthood is the descendants of Aaron. The Levites is everyone in that tribe. And so Moses took the carts and the oxen, gave them to the Levites. 2 carts, 4 oxen he gave to the sons of Gershon, according to what they are supposed to do. Right? Supposed to do. And then 4 carts and 8 oxen he gave to the sons of Merari. When you do that, you have 6 carts and 12 oxen. And when you say carts, it's everything in the cart, which means that the carts have a lot of other stuff, right? According to their service under the authority of Itmar, the son of Aaron, the priest. But to the sons of Kohath he gave none, because theirs was the service of the holy things, which they carried on their shoulders. What do? If you remember in chapter 4, the sons of Kohath is to carry. They bear up the Ark of the Covenant. They carry the table, the menorah. That's their job. But to Gershon and Merari, they have other things. In verse 10, it says, now the leaders offered the dedication for the altar when it was anointed. So the leaders offered their offering before the altar. And this gives us a clue. What clue are they giving? Well, the clue is this, that they are offering the dedication of offering. They are approaching. The word offered is approach. The dedication of offering for the altar when it was anointed. So the leaders offered their offering before the altar. So after the altar was set up, after everything was done, all right, which was after the 2nd month, there is a time where all their offerings were made. 1 leader each day for the dedication of the altar, right? 1 leader each day, which means that there will be the cart and the ox. Everything in the cart, by the way. And so we will not be going through every verse, but we will just go through at least 1 day, and it happens for 12 days. So let's look at this. And the one who offered his offering in verse 12, the word offering means his approach. What he brings when he comes near. So things for coming near. The word offering doesn't really mean the offering. It really means the things he's carrying when he comes to meet God. I'm sorry. Wrong word. Let's do this again. The one who offered, that's to come near. His offering is korban. Korban is a name that is used for these things. That when you come near to God, you bring something. And so korban are the things. It's the name used. And it is actually, in other words, it's an offering, it's an oblation. There are also gifts to God. And the first day was Nashon, the son of Aminadab from the tribe of Judah. So the first guy who had his ritual is this. So in verse 13, his korban, his offering, his korban. And we won't be repeating because it's all the same. Everybody brought the same. Was one silver platter, the weight of which was 130 shekels, one silver bowl weighing 70 shekels, one, and this is according to the shekel of the sanctuary, both of them full of fine flour mixed with oil as a grain offering. Okay? And so the first thing you find is a grain offering. Now, let me just remind all of us, go back to Leviticus chapter 1 to 5. And you would see what kind of offerings can you bring to the tabernacle or the temple eventually. And notice, they are not for atonement. Not everything is for atonement. It's for coming to see God. So let's carry on and look at what they do. One gold pan of 10 shekels full of incense is for incense. One young bull, male, one ram, that's a male sheep. One male lamb, a young one that is also male, in its first year as a burnt offering. And a burnt offering is an olah. Olah means it's to be burned on the altar, and the smoke will rise, and so will the scent rise up, and that's why it's called a burnt offering. Then you would find that they have one he goat, right? In verse 16, this is not just a kid, it is a he goat. Notice everything is male of the goat, and you offer it as a chatat. That's a sin offering. That is a chatat. And then, and for the sacrifice of peace offering. Now remember, the peace offering, in verse 6, in verse 17, it is shalem, right? This is a shalem. That would be a completion of the rituals. And they have this to offer: 2 oxen, 5 rams, 5 he goats, 5 male sheep in their first year. And this was the offering of Nashon, the son of Aminadab, and this is Judah. And so you notice there is a burnt offering, there's a peace offering, and there's a grain offering, and there's a sin offering. And so go back and read Leviticus chapters 1 to 5 to have a much better feel of what they did. And now each of them are doing what they are supposed to do. They are offering to God. Now, this was one leader each day. And so what do you have? You have 12 days. 12 days for the dedication of the altar, which means that these animals were slaughtered and they were burnt for the offering. And so you find that the second day was Issachar, and everything was there. The third day was Zebulun. Everything was the same. We have the fourth day, and this was Reuven. And then you have the fifth day, Simeon. On the sixth day, you have Gad. On the seventh day, you have Ephraim. On the 8th day, you have Manasseh. On the 9th day, you have Benjamin. On the 10th day, we have Dan. 11th day, Asher. And finally, on the 12th day was Naphtali. And so after all this is done, then there is a summation, right? There is a summation. Look at verse 84. This was the dedication for the altar from the leaders. So the word dedication is consecration. This is a consecration offering because it is for the dedication of the what do you call it, of the altar. And the word consecration is the word Hanukkah. Just like in the festival of lights, the feast before the springtime, that is the dedication of the temple after the Jews took it back from the Greeks and they lighted the menorah, and that would be the dedication of the temple to God once again, and that is also called the day of Hanukkah. And so dedication is Hanukkah. And this is the Hanukkah of the altar from the leaders of Israel when it was appointed. This is the total: 12 silver platters, 12 silver bowls, 12 gold pans, each weigh 130 shekels. Each bowl weighs 70 shekels. All the silver weighs 2,400 shekels according to the shekel of the sanctuary. The 12 gold pans full of incense, 10 shekels apiece, according to the shekel of the sanctuary. All the gold of the pans, 100 shekel, 20 shekels. All the oxen for burnt offering, 12. Rams, 12. Male lambs in the first year, 12. Grain offering, 12 bowls, right? The kids of the goats, the he goats as hatat, 12. All the oxen for the sacrifice of share lamb, 24 bulls, 60 rams, and 60 male goats, and 60 rams, or we call it male lambs. And this was the Hanukkah for the altar after it was anointed. And it's a grand affair. It's a grand affair. And now, when Moses went into the tabernacle of meeting to speak with God, and this is Jehovah, he heard the voice of one speaking to him from above the mercy seat that was on the ark of the testimony between the two cherubim, and thus he spoke to him. Thus means in this manner. So what you find is this, that when Moses went into the tabernacle of meeting, so let me just show you. So let's say this is the tabernacle of meeting, right? And Moses went in. What essentially it represents, I guess it's symbolic, is that when we read of Rebecca, going into the tent with Isaac, Genesis chapter 24, reading from verse 64 to 67. Right? 64 to 67. We read from Genesis chapter 24, and we go down to verse 64 towards the end of the chapter. And you would see this happening in verse 64. Then Rebekah lifted her eyes and she saw Isaac. She dismounted from her camel and she said to the servant, "Who is this man walking in the field to meet us?" "It is my master." And that would be Isaac. And so she took a veil and covered herself. Now, this is a custom that a married woman covers herself when she meets another man. And in this case, representing that she is already taken, right? And then in verse 66, the servant told Isaac all the things that he had done. Then Isaac brought her into his mother's tent. All right. And she took Rebekah and she became his woman. Not just wife, right? Became his woman. And he loved her. So Isaac was comforted after his mother's death. Now, the reason why I wanted to point this out to you is that in the ancient customs, going into the tent, as you can see here, right, going into the tent, brought her into her mother's tent and took Rebekah, means to have sex with Rebekah. And this constitute marriage in the ancient sense, because consummation represents confirmation. All right, just bear this in mind. And so now we come back to verse 89. When Moses went into the tabernacle of meeting to speak with God, right? This is God. What it symbolizes, right? What it symbolizes is a consummation of marriage between Israel and Jehovah. So this is a symbolism, and this actually represents the kind of a relationship that God has with his people. Now, this is just a symbolism, right? It is not it's not like two persons really getting married. So that's why I use this word symbolizes. The relationship between God and Israel is one of a husband and wife. And thereby you would understand that all the activities that God does with Israel has a lot to do with a marriage relationship. Hence, there is a discussion on divorce, right, in Jeremiah chapter 3, because it is a picture that we are getting that God and Israel has consumed and has affirmed the relationship into one of a marriage. At Mount Sinai, God says, "I want to make you into a holy nation that's dedicated to him, a nation of priests." And then in chapter 24 of Exodus, the people said, "Well, all that God has said, we will do." It's like an I do statement. And then God instructs to build the tent, the tabernacle. And now everything is done, it's dedicated, and it's ready to go. And so Moses went in. Literally tells us of this symbolism to tell us that now the instructions is going into a different level altogether. That God protects the wife, not just like a husband protects the wife, provides for the wife. Everything God does is a faithful husband to help his people understand who God is, and so that the people will remain faithful to God. And God is not just any any God. He's the true and living God in this case, and has all these rituals for them, and they have given God all these things. And the things is actually meant for the ritual to recognize this marriage. And so this is a big deal in Numbers chapter 7 in terms of a concept of coming together. And with that, I think we can actually take one step back and look at the entire nation of Israel, and moving forward from Numbers chapter 7, understand the nature of the relationship. So Israel and God is not just a follower with God, one who believes in God. God crafts the relationship in a more intimate way, which is very different from all the nations around them where they believe in their pagan gods. They have none of this concept. And when you have one of a marriage, basically it tells Israel that God will respond to Israel, will relate to Israel, will teach Israel, will guide Israel, will protect Israel, will provide for Israel, and expects Israel to obey and comply and to do what God says. And that's the ancient tradition of a husband and wife. It is very different, obviously, from modern day marriage. And so modern day marriages is, well, modern day. And the ancient marriage is what is being reflected here in the 5 books of Moses, in the relationship between God and Israel. And so as we move on, then you can see that God is not just, it's not seen as that friendly God that you be pally-pally with. God is a serious God. It's one that you have to obey him. God's tabernacle, God's rules, and now God has stepped up and shown the relationship to be one, to be very tight, that the two shall become one, that Israel is supposed to cleave to God, and God will cleave to her. That means the two shall become one flesh, and they will stick together for life. And that's the expectation that God has with Israel. And with this, we come to the end of Numbers chapter 7.